Oh, well, hit, okay. You just tell me when.
We are still uploading, so I'll give you a thumbs up when.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to tonight's virtual public meeting for the Cameron Peak Fire. My name is Lauren Maloney. I'm a public information officer with Northwest Team 6. Tonight, we're going to hear from we're going to have 4 presentations, and that will be followed by a question and answer session. Of course, you can ask your questions on Facebook, and I have for the Cameron Peak Fire. My name is Lauren Maloney. I'm a public information officer. I have public information officers who will be capturing questions from off of Facebook, and they will share that with me for the question and answer at the end. Of course, you can ask your questions on Facebook, and I'll recap near the end and help connect you to additional resources. Thanks for bearing with us as we had a little audio going on there. I'll recap toward the end and share some resources with you, and then offer a good night. So, moving on, I'm going to invite Incident Commander Sean Sheldon.
Good evening, everybody. Sean Sheldon, IC with PNW Team 6. Want to thank you all for tuning in to this Facebook Live event, and hopefully we could get some questions answered for you guys and kind of give you a good idea of what's been going on the last few days and what we're up against today and going into the future. So today, as y'all all were aware, we did have a little bit of wind out there. Actually a significant amount of wind, which really challenged the firefighters out there on the ground. And so John will kind of cover what they did and what occurred, but a lot of hard work went in leading up to that today, and a lot of hard work happened today as well. We're definitely not out of the woods. We have multiple days where we're going to have high temperatures in the mid 70s, low 80s. Our relative humidity, which is the moisture in the air, are going to be in the single digits for the next 3 to 4 days, which is really concerning. The only benefit we see right now is the winds are going to die down to in the 10 to 14 mile an hour range. So although still high, not as high as what we face today. And if your question is about relative humidity, anytime we get below 20, that's a real concern for us. And like I said, single digit RHs for the next several days. And then low recovery at night as well. So normally you benefit from the night, cool temperatures, bring in some moisture, and that helps out with things. We're not going to see that in the next several days. The other thing we're going to see in the upcoming future is instability in the atmosphere. And so what I mean by that is when you see dust devils and things like that, that means the ability for the fire to stand up and be extreme fire behavior is going to be there for the next 3 days. So low stability, or high instability out there on the fire, and low RHs for the next several days. So a lot of challenging times ahead, but we're ready and able to face those challenges. And with that, again, thank you guys, and look forward to answering some of your questions.
Thank you, Sean. Now I'm going to invite up John Norton Jensen for an operational update on the fire.
Good evening, Cameron Peak followers. The fire situation today, we had a pretty challenging day today with regards to the weather conditions, which you heard the IC talk about. We had some very challenging conditions last night. So we woke up this morning, got the report from night operations, and this is what we heard. The fire, after the big mountain wave event, which we posted a Facebook post on from the meteorologists, the mountain wave event, we had a one area heat which got out over the lines on us. If you watched my update this morning, we talked about it. So we had about a 60 to 70 acre slop on the north end here on this 333 Alpha Road, kind of east of Kilpecker Tower. So the priority for today was to get line around this spot, the spot fire, and use aviation assets if we could with regards to the wind. Well, the wind held off just enough, and the pilots, with the skill they had, did a great job of supporting the fire. So we had Division Romeo and Lima Foxtrot in combination with Type 1 helicopters, as about an hour and a half ago, have mechanical line around about a 50 to 60 acre slop on the north end. So with that, the other parts of the fire were definitely a priority as well. The big plan for today was, as you saw this morning, was hold and secure what we have. So Division Delta did a good job of seeking and destroying heats. Anything over the line, they did a good job of mopping up. Division Alpha spent a lot of time down here in the long draw area. They defensively fired out. So they burned down Corral Creek towards the 156 road to try to button up this heat to prevent fire spread to the south. In the park in Whiskey Zulu, we had good monitors in place to look into Chapin. Any kind of heat in there. There was some activity there yesterday. We used the helicopter on. Today it was deemed not necessary. It was deemed not a threat. Resources Division Whiskey Zulu also worked on some contingency lines in the park as well. Tango Uniform saw a good bit of activity today as well. Above Comanche and out towards Beaver Creek, we used helicopters and large air tankers to put retardant down to check fire spread working its way south and west of Beaver Creek. We also got some new resources in the Tango Uniform country today here at Pegby Park. They went over the structure protection plan and started scouting for indirect or for contingency lines in the area as well. We have more resources going to that area tomorrow. Along Highway 14, we had lots of challenges today. I've been pointing out these big green fingers here the last week or so. These big green fingers decided to burn today. So a lot of the smoke you saw on the fire today was out of these big fingers closing up. So these areas of unburned fuel, when I say big fingers here. So here in the Elephant Butte area, Elephant Butte Mountain area off of 14, we had some challenges. Lots of fire near close to structures. We had to put structure protection plans in place. Resources are currently mopping up and securing, defensively firing around structures in the area. We'll have more on that tomorrow for sure. On Highway 14, we patrolled, mopped up, kept a good presence, checked houses inside and outside the block. In Division Romeo here, the Mount Plover area, there's still some heat to be mopped up. We had a lot of wind on this part of the fire today, and the good news is the lines held. We had to use some helicopter buckets interior here where I'm pointing with the old red arrow today, but it was only a cycle of buckets. So most of the aviation work was up here on the slop over we had east of Kilpecker Tower. So Romeo held. We had resources from Structure Group North, supporting Division Romeo, patrolling houses in the black and outside the black, making sure they were secure. Plan for tomorrow really depends on what happens tonight. You've heard our IC talk about how dry it's going to be tomorrow. The red flag warning is not forecasted for tomorrow, but tomorrow is going to be a good opportunity with the winds being less to really focus on getting hose lays and crews and water on our slop over fire here on the north end. We're also going to continue to use aviation assets on the south and long draw and Chapin if necessary. And Tango Uniform is going to be a priority as well. Use aviation assets to check heat as it progresses south towards Comanche and the west of Beaver Creek there as well. We're also working on improving a trail system to use as a line to prevent fire spread to the south as well, an existing trail system. Highway 14 is going to be patrolled. We're going to do a lot of mopping up in the finger here around Highway 14 to make sure that heat is secured around houses. We're going to do a lot of patrolling and monitoring here in the Romeo country, Mount Plover, Elkhorn, to make sure that the lines are secure. So we're in all divisions tomorrow are going to be mopping up, holding what they have, and improving to make sure we can get ready for future wind events, which are coming later in the week. That's all I have for now. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good report. Now we're going to bring in from Poudre Valley Rural Electric Association, Chief Operating Officer John Bauerfein. John will be joining us via Zoom.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening. I'm John Bauerfein. I'm the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Poudre Valley Rural Electric Association. Poudre Valley provides electricity to the areas affected by the Cameron Peak fire. The electric facilities have received extensive damage at this point from the fire. This is still an active fire area, and we're working currently to restore power as safely as possible under the current conditions. We have contract line crews that are working with Poudre Valley to help restore the electric facilities. This evening, I'm going to provide a brief high-level overview of the restoration efforts. So far our transmission system, and the transmission is the high voltage lines that bring power from a substation to another substation. And we do have 6 structures that have been damaged by the fire. These are located along County Road 69, which is a Manhattan road between County Road 74E and Highway 14. Repairs have started on these and will be continuing throughout the next week or two. We have had 1 substation that was damaged from the fire. The fire did not actually penetrate into the substation, but it was around and close enough to the substation with this intense heat that it damaged some of our high voltage power cables at our rustic substation. So those repairs have started as well and are underway, and we are expediting that as quickly as possible. As far as our distribution lines go, those are the lines that take the power from the substations down along the streets and to the homes that utilize it. And there's probably 3 main areas that we've been affected with the fire. The first is along the Highway 14 corridor that runs west of County Road 69, or the Manhattan Road. A very large number of poles are down in this section, around 4 miles worth of lines. And we are in process right now of restoring them. Crews have started work along that path, and that will continue. Crews are working long hours. They're working pretty much dusk to dawn these days to get those lines on. And of course, if they can work on it, is dependent on incident command on whether they allow us into the area to complete the work. The next area where we've had some damage on the distribution system is along County Road 69, the Manhattan Road. This is south of the Boy Scout Road, County Road 68C. There's a section of 20 or so poles that are down. We have a plan where we believe we can restore some of these services sooner rather than later by doing some rerouting of our power system, and that work is progressing as starting today. The last area is County Road 63E, or the Pengree Park Road, including Monument Gulch. This is an area that was hit pretty hard around Labor Day weekend, and work has been going on in this section of line since then. There is some areas of line that are down and need to be rerouted, so those are being redesigned. Areas that do not need to be redesigned are either under construction or some of them have already been completed. So once again, work is progressing in all the areas that have been affected so far by the fire. If you have any specific questions, you could enter them into the chat, or you could send an email to communications@pvrea.gov. co-op, or you could visit our website at pvrea.com. And on the homepage, there is a link that will be providing the current and updated information that we have available. With that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Lauren.
Thank you, John. We appreciate you. Now I'm going to invite Captain Joe Shellhammer from the Larimer County Sheriff's Office.
Thanks, Lauren. Pretty amazing day out there today with the high winds we had throughout this fire since August 13th. Every time we had a large wind event, the fire made gigantic runs. With the work this team has done and the teams before it, and putting a lot of contingencies in place, the fire really didn't get outside the lines today too much. A little bit up north, but with the plan that was in place by this team, did a great job catching that and getting more lines around that. A lot of great work has been done. The fire was pretty extreme in Pooter Canyon today, and a lot of crews were in there. I know Pooter Canyon was down there, and Glacier View was down there, and Larimer County Sheriff's Office, emergency service units, and the team protecting those houses through pretty extreme fire behavior. Red Feather Lakes fire was really busy this whole week, and then today, patrolling those north ends, making sure no smokes and fire got out of line there. Chief Hill has been just every day up there working super hard to make sure those communities are super safe. The Mullen fire up north, in contact with the team up there all day long, figuring out what's going on for North Hunholtz and Old Roach. Looks like the fire kind of stayed in check. It kind of bounced around a little bit on that north end or the south end of the fire, our north corner there, but didn't make any huge movements. So everything seems to be staying pretty safe up there. They did have some big runs on their fire, but more to the northeast, not affecting our communities. Some of the questions I got after the last Facebook Live was about how you determine evacuations and what are the things that the decision-making process. Obviously fire behavior, weather, terrain, the fuels that are there. Is it heavy timber or is it grass? The drainages going into those communities. And then the big thing is accessibility, right? Are they good roads, big roads, easy to get people in and out? Or is it super difficult to get sheriff's deputies in there and to get people out? Or is it a one-way in, one-way out? So all those are taken into the consideration when we're doing evacuations or preparing for them. And then the same thing goes when we're trying to lift evacuations. What does the weather look like? What's the fire acting like? How are these lines holding? And those conversations are had. We have them in the morning. We talk about it all the time. The last thing we want to do is keep people out of their homes any longer than we possibly have to. So again, we're going to talk about it tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning. And hopefully with these lines holding solid, we're getting closer and closer. So we're concerned about it. We want to get people back to their homes as soon as we can. We just got to make sure we do it with the best decision making we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Shellhammer. So to recap, so far tonight, we've heard from our Incident Commander, Sean Sheldon. We've heard from our Operations Section Chief Trainee, John Norton Jensen. We've had an update from the Poudre Valley Rural Electric Association from Chief Operating Officer, John Bauerfeind. And we've just heard from Captain Joe Shellhammer from the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Now what we're going to do is move into a question and answer session. So I'll be reading the questions and inviting each of the four speakers to help respond to them. So first, I'd like to bring up John Bauerfeind, if we can. I'll repeat the question for John. When will electric power be restored to Pooter City?
We are working as diligently as possible out restoring power. Every day is a new adventure and new challenges that are brought to us. So at this point, we cannot give any specific dates or times other than we're aware of it and we are actively working to restore power. And if you have any specific and questions on it, once again, you can email us with it. You could also sign up on our app that we have, our Smart Hub app, and when power is restored, it will give notification to you that your power is available.
Thank you, John. Now I'm going to invite Operations Section Chief Trainee, John Norton Jensen, back up to answer some questions for us. John? Okay, so the first question I want to ask is, please talk about the fire creeping down Sleeping Elephant in the Kinnickinnick area.
So in the Kinnickinnick area, that's where that green finger gave us some problems today. So we're 14 turns kind of to the southwest. The fire will continue to creep down. The winds tonight, you're going to see this hole get smaller and smaller and smaller as it burns out more and more and more. That's why we've really focused our structure group south, that group responsible for that 14 corridor, really focusing them on setting up sprinklers, pumps, tanks, and trying to build fire line around houses, and we call it protective firing. So when that fire is coming down Elephant Butte, we'll fire that off behind the house to remove the fuels between the house and the fire coming down the mountain. The problem today was the winds were blowing so hard, it became, firefighters had to withdraw when the fire started slamming the road. As Captain Joe mentioned, there was some extreme fire behavior in this location today. The firefighters did well, but they had to go to more defensive tactics with turning pumps on and ensuring that as the fire front passed, they went back in and dealt with it, which all they could do in that area with regards to water support and any further defensive fire. But to be very clear, the main fire movement in here today was the fire itself getting pushed by the wind. So it was a challenge, but we had a lot of success in this area today for sure.
And just to follow up, clarifying then, so there is still fire on the 14 corridor east of the fish hatchery?
For sure. So when we have a pretty major road going through a fire, we talk to all our partners, like at the sheriff's office, CDOT, local volunteer fire departments, because this area is not, flames, there's going to still be some problems with rolling rocks, trees, fire weakened trees. So there's lots of things that have to happen that before a road can be open and allow people to use it. But yes, there is still some fire east of the hatchery for sure. But as you progress further to the east, you're going to be more and more in areas that have burned in the past. We call the black. But there are still some hazards associated with that. We have to work with our partners to ensure that road's safe to drive. So good question, though.
Thank you, John. While we have you up here, we're going to ask you another question.
I'm back. Okay.
Can you identify the difference between black containment line and black bulldozer line? It's hard to see on the screen.
That's a great question. So I'm going to trace black containment line with the famous red arrow here. So we have black containment line, the Bel Air Lake's kind of coming down to the 267 road. This area is looking really good, but it is dozer line. The combination dozer line and some roads. It's looking really good, but we're not going to contain this area just yet. Still have some heat we need to mop up. As we cruise down the 68 Charlie, kind of turn south towards 14 and come back, this is all containment line. Down to 14. All containment line down Division Tango. All containment line all the way above Penguin Park here until you hit some nose line, some hand line combination we built here in the last couple days. And then it stops. There's Penguin Park. We have some containment line on some high elevation parts of the fire in the park. We have some containment line here on the west side Division Alpha where the fire initially started. If we work in the Division Delta, we have some dozer line, we have some hand line combinations going all the way up towards Kilpacker. This area is still going to be mop up, secured, worked by crews, engines, and make sure that the heat is far enough removed from the containment line that we can contain it. But if there's any heat proximate to the line, we're going to do our job, remove that heat until it's contained. You get up here in Kilpacker, yes, there's a lot of dozer line. This stretch, like we've been talking about in the mornings, from Bel Air Lakes all the way over to kind of west of Kilpacker, this is a combination of dozer line and hand line. And it's going to contain the fire, but it's not containment line. It's used to put a fire line on the ground, but to be called contained is a different set of standards.
Thank you, John. That'll be it for the moment. We might invite you back up.
Yes, ma'am.
So then I'm going to invite back up here to answer some questions for us our incident commander, Sean Sheldon. So Sean, someone has asked, is there still a lot of heat in the interior area of this fire?
So that's a good question. In some areas, there's still quite a bit of heat on the interior. In other areas, there isn't. And so some of the areas where there isn't, where the fire started initially, that's had longer time to burn, and those fuels have burned out. And then some areas have gotten into a grass fuel type where previous fires were, and then got that snow from a couple of weeks ago on it that put the fire out. But there's a significant number of areas where there was a large component of dead and down material. And that takes either firefighters in there squirting water on it and chopping things up, or just that material to burn up and consume. And so there's a mix across the whole landscape out there.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question for you. Someone wants to know, will some of the work being done now protect us from future incidents?
So that's a great question, and the answer is yes, it will. Not only the fire itself is going to provide some sense of security into the future, but a bunch of the work that's done that John was pointing out, some of these exterior dozer lines and prep work out in this area. So what I mean by prep work is they've gone in there and removed some of the fuels. So those lines are going to be in place going into the future. So any new fires that start up, that work has already been done. You won't have to wait for that work to be completed before you could do some type of offensive firefighting that we like to talk about, which is fighting fire with fire. So it's a lot of good work that's been done that is going to benefit you into the future.
Thank you, Incident Commander Sean. We're going to invite up now Captain Shellhammer. Thank you. Okay, so I've got a few questions for you here. The first is, do we have to wait for full containment to return to Red Feather Lakes?
No. Obviously, I talked about it before that we're going to have discussions. We're constantly having discussions. If we could get some of Red Feather in the near future, we will. It really depends on fire behavior. We don't have to wait till full containment. We don't have to wait till it's 100% out. But we do have to make sure that that this fire is not going to get out of the lines and make some big runs and put people in danger. So no.
Thank you. Next question for you. Please explain the credentialing process and how people are getting into areas.
The credentialing done by our Emergency Operations Center, and it's pretty much, I know there's people that have cabins and homes, and it's not their primary address. So you just need to bring a power bill or something that says that that cabin belongs to you. And then the Emergency Operations Center will give you an ID card, and that just helps speed things along at the roadblocks, especially when we'll slide things back from mandatory to voluntary. It will just hurry people through those checkpoints and get them back in their homes faster and more efficiently. We tried to do this early on in the fire and get the folks in Redfield and Crystal credentialed early on so we can get them back in quicker and easier.
Thank you. I've got a few more for you here.
Okay.
Okay. How are some people allowed into their Crystal Lakes homes and some are not?
So it's a mandatory evacuation area. So people come to the checkpoint and say, hey, I need medication for my ailing grandmother that we left at the house, or some other desperate need thing, and we get them back in there to get those things and get out. A few people refuse to leave. We're not gonna drag them out of there. It's their decision if they want to stay in an area that could be dangerous, and some have stayed, but most made the wise decision to get out of the way of these two gigantic fires, the one to the north and the one here, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the how everyone cooperated. Most people cooperated, and we're prepared. You know, living up there it has some inherent danger, and most people were prepared, and that made the evacuations pretty efficient, and we didn't have any injuries during evacuation. No civilian injuries, no civilian deaths, which I commend our communities for being prepared.
Okay, we've got about 3 more for you,
Okay.
and then we'll invite our REA partner to talk with us. So, how are the structures at Bel Air Lake?
So Bel Air Lake, a huge fire came through Bel Air Lake, mostly outside of the campground, which preserved most of the campground area. I was in there a couple days ago and looked. So Bel Air Campground, Bel Air Lake, most of it survived. Some of the beetle kill timber did not, and that got burned pretty hot. But with a little bit of work, hopefully next summer campers will be back in there.
Thank you. Got 2 more for you.
Okay.
How are you making sure properties are secure during evacuations?
Okay. So the sheriff's deputies have been on the fire in these communities since August 13, 24 hours a day. There's a night shift crew that's attached just to those communities, checking on things, making sure nothing's out of sorts, that people aren't sneaking in and committing any crimes. This is a gigantic drain on the sheriff's office. Not only do we have our patrol deputies working the street, answering calls, on the days off, people are attached to the fire. So since August 13th, most of our folks are working almost every day. We're trying to get them one day off here or there, maybe a second day off here and there. But through 2020, through COVID, through this now, our young deputies have just pretty much been working full time all the time. It's been a gigantic drain, but it's our job, and to make sure that when you're away from your house and you're evacuated, that we keep those communities safe, and that no criminal activities happen in there.
Thank you. Last question while we have you up here. Some people are asking about additional structure damage since the last big run. I believe they're talking about Saturday, the 26th.
Correct.
Are you aware of anything?
So obviously we had some extreme fire behavior today. I haven't got all the information from what happened late this evening or while it was getting dark. Obviously, if we have new information, we'll get that going as soon as we can tomorrow. We haven't had any new damage assessment team work done since that big run, and we'll have to see if that needs to be done tomorrow once things settle down with the wind that we had today.
Thank you, Captain Shellhammer.
Thank you.
So now we're going to bring in from Zoom John Bauerfeind. We're going to ask him a couple of questions. John, are you with us?
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. So the first question for you is, how do you put electrical utilities up in an active fire, and how do you protect your equipment from future fires?
Well, we make sure that the area is safe before we send any crews in to do any kind of restoration effort. So we're in close contact with the incident command. And if the fires are too close to areas we need to work in, we're just not going to be working in those areas until conditions change. So we're not going to put anybody in danger, and we don't want to put facilities up in an area where the fire is still going to come through and destroy the newly erected poles that we place. As far as protecting facilities in the future, so much of this gets down to good vegetation management and keeping the fuels away from our poles. And it's about having aggressive tree removal and trimming processes in the utility, as well as we did find a material that we did do some wrapping on some of our poles. And it is a very heavy duty aluminum foil type wrap that we were able to wrap the bottom portions of the poles, and had tremendous success saving structures by utilizing that. As I said earlier, we had 6 transmission structures that were down, and we had all of the transmission structures wrapped, and we could see where the fire came right up to many of the structures. It charred around the structure some, and did not cause any significant damage. So there are some mitigation practices that we employed, and certainly more things looking forward that need to be employed into the future.
Okay, thank you, John. Now I'm going to ask you the million-dollar question. You may have heard this one before, and then I'll follow up with another question. When do you expect the power to be restored? And when does PVREA expect to be restored on the Pingree Road above Monument Gulch?
Yeah, I'm sure that's the question everybody would like to know, including ourselves. It's still an active fire area, and every day we're not able to get crews in to work on restoring our lines. So when we are taking advantage of the days we're able to get in and do the restoration efforts. All these lines weren't built in a day or two. It takes time to restore everything back to the pre-fire condition, and we are actively working on it. We brought in additional resources, additional contractors to help us out, and we're really not able to provide those dates and times for restoration at this point.
Thank you, John. That concludes the questions for you. Now I'm going to invite up Operations Section Chief Trainee John Norton Jensen for one final question in our Q&A session tonight. John, the question is, sorry, it just disappeared. Oh, there's another. Did John say that there's another wind event on the way in a few days?
It's a weather event, so a little different. So we're going to have temperatures forecasted, so we'll see if it happens. But the incident meteorologist feels very certain that we're going to have temperatures in the low 70s. But the key is the relative humidity. The relative humidity is going to be, it's forecasted to be 6%. That is extremely low. Anytime we get humidities in the single digits, that is kicking logs and they explode in the dust. Dry fuel kind of low. So that's not the best. We also have winds forecasted from the southwest in the 15, kind of gust in the 20. So there is going to be some wind for sure. But the major indicator there is it's been dry for a long time, and it's going to be 6% for a low for relative humidity, which is extremely challenging because when the humidity gets that low, what we call spotting. So when a lodgepole pine torches, so it catches on fire, it throws little embers everywhere. We call that spotting. So the drier it gets on the ground from relative humidity, so those fuels become dry, the more receptive to those spots catching fire. So that's a very large challenge to fire suppression efforts. Good question.
Thank you, John. Okay, I spoke too soon. We've got one more question that we're going to ask Captain Shellhammer to come up here and answer. Okay, thank you. So the question is, why was FedEx allowed in with packages when it's mandatory evacuations?
It really depends on, talking to where the delivery needs to go. Some of the deliveries were medication for people that stayed. Some of the deliveries were vet supplies to our ranchers that still have cattle in the area. So we're really trying to, make a determination of need and critical need to bring those things in. Also working with the postmaster in Bellevue and down in Livermore to try to make sure that people's mail is staying safe and that they have the ability to pick it up when they're displaced at this time. So we're really spending a lot of time and effort to deal with everybody's needs and questions. FedEx, mail, everything else. To try to make sure we're making the best decision that we possibly can, and for the right reasons. So not everything is a blanket decision. We're looking at circumstances, and then if there's a need there, definitely a medical need, or for our ranchers, their need for their cattle to get medicine. We're trying to make that happen as best we possibly can.
Thank you, Captain Shellhammer. So that concludes our time for question and answers tonight. I just have a couple of final comments for you. I do want to remind you that if you have questions about the Cameron Peak Fire, you are invited to call us on our fire information line where we can answer questions more specifically in a personalized way. You can visit our InsaWeb page. There on InsaWeb, you can find the story map where you can go in and enter your address and see how the fire relates to your home. You can follow us on Facebook. You can drop us a question at any time. And we even have videos up on YouTube. So there are quite a few ways that you can tie in with us and get the information that you need for the Cameron Peak Fire. One final thought. Today is Monday, October the 5th. And it is the beginning of National Fire Prevention Week. As we talked about during last week's meeting, we have pretty extreme conditions. You've heard John talk about the weather. It's dry, it's warm. We've got a weather event coming later this week. Anything that we do to create a spark is likely to create another wildfire. And with resources out there on the landscape already, we have enough fire here in Colorado. It's clear to me this is a beautiful community. People care about it a great deal. So please help spread the message that this is National Fire Prevention Week, and we particularly want to emphasize wildfire prevention. And with that, we'll close tonight's meeting. Thank you.